If you look at the followers of Tim Cook, Elon Musk, or Richard Branson, these guys have more followers than the actual companies. I always push for entrepreneurs to be out there. You want to build a company that's going to last 20, 30 years. Investing for months doesn't feel that of an investment.
What would you say is branding for an early stage startup?
The idea is that you put at the heart of your brand and the brand at the heart of your... That's why it's Epicenter.
If you went back to your younger self, what advice would you give?
Buy Apple stock.
Ezequiel Abramzon, who also goes by Easy, is the founder of LALO, a brand strategy consultancy company that turns founders into branding genius. He started his career with Walt Disney and has moved his way becoming a successful entrepreneur.
Strategy and mindset is something that goes together. I always explain this as hardware and software. Companies, they copy those, assuming that if they do that these successful companies do, they will be successful and it's going to work for them, and it's the opposite because...
Funny how you have to sometimes break free to be free.
Welcome, Easy.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
From Madrid, to be exact.
Yeah. We start with the Spanish. Do you...
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Un poquito.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I only have to tell you, but when I was 9 or 10 years old, I lived in Madrid for a year. So I was fluent in Spanish before I was fluent in English. Now the Spanish comes back only when I'm in Mexico with a couple of tequila shots.
Okay.
Don't test me.
Margaritas and all of that. I'll put you up to a test later.
Yeah. So I would say this is kind of a unique virtual room right now because we share something very interesting. You were at Disney for 20 years. I was at Disney for 19 years. Michael, a measly 15 years. And now, obviously, we're just all three Disney executive alums. But can you talk about kind of what led to you leaving Disney? Because, Michael and I have our own stories, too.
Awesome. Actually, it's 22 years for me. So
22 years.
Think of
Wow.
that. We've both
You
been
beat
put
us-
into
you
the
beat-
small.
You beat me by 3 and you beat Michael by 7.
Yeah.
talking about veterans. So for telling the story of why I left, I just want to recap of why I joined. I always wanted to work at Disney. I'm from Argentina, South Latin America, and a country where you wouldn't imagine that Disney is present as a company. So back in the mid 90s, I joined Disney as a freelance illustrator and graphic designer. My first job was drawing the characters for the marketing team. And then because I was into electronic art, which was, I worked in digital animation, computer animation before Toy Story, so that old. And I also was into websites and CD-ROMs, interactive design. So I asked Disney, what are your websites? And we didn't have any. So I had the chance to launch the first websites in Spanish for the region, for the history of the company. And since then, I started taking over the digital stuff for Disney, doing tons of things. I became, years later, the GM, the general manager of the digital business. And we built a 9-figure business for multiple B2B and B2C operations in the digital side, video games, apps, advertising, distribution of movies, you name it. And then I started to expand my role. I took over also creative, an amazing team in Latam. I started reorganizing the team by the time that Disney merged with Fox. And it was a juggernaut M&A, and Disney started to change the scheme, adapt to, assemble, the two companies, finding places for everyone, restructuring. Yeah. And at that time, I decided to leave the digital side and keep the creative, the design, the product development part of the company. And I did that for 6 months in 2018. And then I was invited to move to Europe to do the same for the region here. And so I moved with my family in 2019. And I will make it sure now. Then the pandemic came in, and a lot of things started to change. And I had a burnout. I actually suffered seriously stress, and I started to miss my mark. So I decided to change my life, drop the executive life, um, changed my life completely. I moved out of London, where I was living, to here, to Spain, to take a sabbatical, and that sabbatical led to doing what I do now.
Wow. Well, I hear a lot of people talk about Spain as a nice place to go and relax, if you will, the culture and stuff like that, and how that feels is a different thing than what a lot of people are used to. It sounds like you're enjoying it.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
Food, weather, geography, culture, diversity. It's amazing, and it's actually in the center of the world, same distance from Asia and I don't know, Alaska,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the thing is, for Argentinians, it's our culture comes from both Italy and Spain, so it's plug and play for us. It was really super easy to come here. It's a very open, very fun, very relaxed country. I wouldn't say that it's just for visiting. I don't want to wake up everyone, but it's actually a great place to live.
Yeah. I've been out there once. I ain't grow up there, but like art, but I was out there before, and it's just so beautiful, especially having, coming from a place, me being basically either Northern Southern California and now in Idaho. And like when you're out there, the history that's just there, it's just so rich and just, I don't know, there's something with the lifestyle and the way that everybody lives too. I just, it was a wonderful place.
Yeah. It is.
So
I love Spain.
What led you then though to jump back in? Because you had that point, you're like, okay, I'm done. But then you decide, you're like, okay, here I go. I'm jumping back in because now you're back at it again. And if you could share a little bit of what you're doing today and why you decided to reconnect with it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was, you need to picture this. 2020, people dying, no vaccines, everything was shut down. I couldn't go back to Argentina, no planes, no, I had to move my furniture. So it's always I had to find a place to land with my family and be safe. And I couldn't stay in the UK because of my visa was sponsored by Disney, and I decided not to search for a job. So I said, okay, I need to leave, and we decided that, Spain was that place. Now, when friends and peers heard that I left Disney, they started calling and say, "Hey, now you have time." So I need help with this or that. I helped friends with the branding aspects of the company, someone with the pitch to sell the company. I helped someone hire their first marketing person. I helped someone. Anyway, I started advising and mentoring, and it was a time of free Zooms, and we were all trying to engage with new people, and I got in love of influencing in a different way. As an executive, you live in a tiny box. You're high, but in a tiny box, because there are multiple other boxes that keep you out of the other territory, right?
Well put. Yeah.
I like that visual.
And it was like seriously limited in that terms. So when I started talking to entrepreneur friends and founders and small teams, every advice I had, which for me was a kind of yeah, we did that in Disney, but it was a tiny thing. For them, it was a life-changing advice, and I saw the breakthrough phases and the impact that my muscles that I wasn't using as an executive at Disney were massive forces for small businesses. So I decided, okay, I need to do something with this. Now, there's another thing. So I was always in technology since the 90s, before internet. I was part of that life. So I was always surrounded, as the head of digital for Disney, I was always surrounded by technicalities, technologists, entrepreneurs, innovation, demo days, pitching, robot. I was all into that since the 90s. So I knew that whatever I was going to do as a professional, I will surround myself with technology entrepreneurs. That was the people that I wanted to help, the people that I understand. And I consider myself one. I'm a co-founder as well, tiny company, and I was an investor. So I'm part of this community. So I decided, okay, if I like this, I'm going to formalize it. I'm going to become a pro consultant. I'm going to develop a methodology. I need to learn new stuff. But this is the type of people, this is the type of problem I want to deal with every day. And I need the tools to help them solve it. So I started studying. I read more books in the last 5 years than in my entire life
Wow.
in order to gain new content. So yeah, that was it.
And obviously from that came LALO. Am I saying it right? Your company?
Yeah.
And what does that stand for?
So it's a two-sided story. First, Lalo was the nickname for my grandfather. He gave me my first computer, the computer which with that computer I learned how to design, and when I was really young. So kind of a homage to that beginning for me, the technology in my life. And also Lalo is Latin love. So I try to promote Latin American talent whenever I can, because I work with companies around the world, and I always try to bring that, give visibility to the talent that I know.
That's awesome. I'm curious with that now, actually, too. Your company, is it a, lack of a better way to put it, solopreneurship, or are you actually having a team that also works for you? What's that look like?
Yeah, we are 250 people.
Holy cow!
I'm kidding.
Oh, I'm like, wait, I missed that. How did I? Yeah.
No. It's just myself. But what I
Okay.
do is, so I have a particular way of working. I am
Yeah.
solopreneur. I do everything,
Okay.
but I bring people in. So I build teams
Nice.
depending on the
Yeah.
project. Design,
Great.
creative, coaches,
Yeah.
other consultants, agencies.
Great.
Depending on the project, we assemble a dream
Yeah.
team.
That's awesome. I mean, that makes sense. I think that's a way of where a lot of ways of partnering and working are going. It's interesting too when you were describing just some of that consulting side, because Artin, when he left Disney, he went into more of a consulting space. And as he's mentioned, it's actually ironic, back to your hand slap thing. It's like in some ways now it's easier to almost get your voice heard and to work across the things you wanted to work across than it was when you were in the company, willing to give your time to do so, but having to work within your, area. So when I hear that, it's like, it's funny how you have to sometimes break free to be free.
Yeah, it is. And so I had the privilege to lead hundreds of people, international teams, award-winning teams across countries in Latin America and in
Yeah.
Europe. And it's so professional at Disney that all the people have clear roles and driven by many motivations and inspirations, purpose-driven people. And with some of the teams that I work with, we were telepathic. We were, we just a look, we understood what we needed. So whenever I had an important meeting, I had tons of people trying to help and try to build, the decks, the presentation, the asset, the research, the demos, everything. Now I'm alone now, and I have to do everything by myself. I look at somewhere, and it's just myself. Sometimes I put a mirror to see someone, but it's a different mindset that I had to adopt and unlearn the Disney way in order to help people move forward in a different way.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. That's something I say after I left Disney and then Netflix is like, there's this thing that you learn working for corporate America for a while and working, in I know you referenced Disney, but even Netflix, all of them, there's still this way and this sort of approach that you have to take. And it takes a while to relearn almost, I don't want to say who you are, because you are still who you are in those places, but it's a different who you are. It's without a little bit of those bumpers, I don't know, that are on it as well. So I'm curious. So now then, so what is it that your company specifically does to help people today? Are you mainly working with Disney? Are you working with loads of companies today?
No, I don't work with corporations. That's
Okay.
one of the things that I kind of decided. The reason why I only work with small companies or startups in the technology space, or that technology is a driver of the business.
Yeah.
And the reason why I decided to do that is because of the breakthrough phase that I mentioned. When I work with the founders or the founding team, um, they change the business real time during the meetings that I'm having. Right? There's no meetings about the meetings that we are going to have. There's no, delay. No, but
I
seriously,
think Michael and I are laughing because it's so
I
relatable.
I know how it is. And so if I can help companies like Disney in several aspects, but I will
Yeah,
be dealing with people that after working with me, they will have to sell the ideas internally. They will have to
Totally.
have conversations in rooms that I'm not part of.
Yep.
And I feel more comfortable in the real time action of entrepreneurs, building the business as we speak, like Play-Doh, and changing the course of the things that they need to change immediately. Not no politics, no thinking. So, a lot of thinking, but not necessarily negotiating to do the things that I do. So that's the
Yeah.
type of companies that I work with. And over the years, I'm 50, right? And so I have more than 30 years in the creative industry, and I identify something because of working at Disney, which is how come so many companies don't have a strategy that leads what they are going to do, right?
Hmm.
How they are going to win, what's the change, the position they want to be. And particularly that was my point when I mentored or coached, uh, from a Disney perspective, some of these startups, and I was a judge in some competitions. And I always asked, well, what's the strategy, or how are you going to do this? Ask these questions. And even big companies don't have a strategy. So
Yeah.
I was always aware of the lack of. So I
Yeah.
decided to change that from the inside. So I decided to, start, preparing myself to be the person that helps them have these breakthroughs, understand that they need to change something. I need to change that. They need a plan. They need something that leads, besides the energy, the hustle, the intentions.
what would you say from brand excellence and storytelling that just embodies Disney? How much of that have you carried over to these smaller early stage startups, or did you have to reinvent the wheel using Disney as just a reference point?
Yeah. So my first clients, I failed miserably because I tried to apply the exact solutions that we did it, the way we did it, and I had a, super high bar, and super high standards.
Hmm.
For Disney, it was either millions of dollars or millions of people, or we don't talk, right? And for a small company, that is not the case. So the type of
Yeah.
vendors that you can advise them engaging with, the type of solutions, the time that they have in order to achieve the things that they have to achieve. So I had to adjust and learn tons of things, but I kept the basics of building a brand. So there are 34 things that I apply in my business, that I apply in my advice, that I actually are kind of how do you say, guardrails. Never say that
Hmm.
word.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Guardrails.
Yeah.
guidelines, guiding
Yeah.
principles for me that I always talk about, which is thinking long term. Disney is a 100 years old company,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't be the company it is now if they didn't have a long-term vision. Every single year, this, the 5 and 10 year plan. So every year you have to revise what you're going to do the next 5 and 10 years. So that mindset of always adjusting the course of the business, and really, because every year is new stuff in the market. So so
Yeah.
so long term, then the love for quality, which is, always pushing the limit to whatever you do it extraordinarily. um, the customer centricity of Disney, from the very beginning of the production of a movie, they test it with audiences, and then, the movie takes 5 years to make in the making, and they told this story every single year of those five, and they showed it to real people, and they tested it.
Yeah.
They're all, Disney is always putting, customers. Don't even talk about the parts, right? So customer centricity is something that I always push for, and actually built my process Epicenter out of this. can talk about that. And the last one, I think, is of course storytelling. The essence, the DNA of a company, and I was born as a professional in Disney, so I have this uh, inherent attraction to tell a good story through great characters and always bring an emotion to the audience, to your customers, to the people that you pitch, right? So those four, I think, are phenomenal. Apart from leadership and all of those human
Sure.
aspects of the work.
So, what would you say is branding for an early stage startup? Like, what should somebody focus on when just either there is not even a product or the product is at MVP and just hit the market? What is branding for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are plenty of definitions, and depending on the type of professional or company or people that you talk to, the definitions that they adopt or they understand, value proposition, customer personas, or positioning or strategy. What is a strategy? What is brand? Right. So let me share with you what I think I adopted as definitions. So a brand is what people feel about a product, service, or an organization. It's an intangible that shapes a perception, right? The brand strategy is this set of directions, definitions, decisions, a plan to influence those emotions into people. And branding is actually putting all of that into practice. So it's actually developing whatever it is an experience or an action or a message that is going to engage and I would say persuade these customers and make them feel what we decided that we wanted them to feel. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you mentioned minimum viable product. I don't think I coined it, but I always use the minimum viable strategy concept, which is there are a couple of things that you definitely need to have right in order to start. So I have two ways of working with companies. One is for super early stage, even from the napkin and creating the business with entrepreneurs, that I call the bootcamp. And then I have the program, which is a longer term engagement for companies that are more mature. But for the super early stage or early stage companies, pre-revenue or MVP even, I think the most important part is what's your position in the market, right? Positioning is the unique way you add value to your customers or to the audience, right? That's I understand it. Now you need to define three things: unique to whom, your customers; unique compared to what, your competitors, the other alternatives that your customers are considering; and unique how. What's your actual difference? What is the differentiated value that you bring? So defining these three things, being clear, even having a hypothesis or a thesis is very important at the early beginning. So there are many mistakes that companies make early stage that prevent them to actually define that position and establishing their businesses in those categories. But I would say that
Can you deep dive those mistakes? Like, drill into those mistakes. What are those? Like, example.
I think the first one, actually, these are things that I how would I say it? It's they leave brand for later, right? Because it's too early. But the thing is, one of the first decisions they made for their companies is naming the company. That's a branding decision, right? And then immediately after naming the company, they create a logo or hire a logo, right? So there's a second branding decision, and then they do a website or a pitch, and then they forget about making decisions for the brand for years, right? They just do marketing, but marketing doesn't feel branding, right? That's a big mistake that I try to fight. It's a misconception. The other mistake is confusing or mixing, how do you say, misplacing. The branding is only visuals. I created the branding of my company, and they are referring to logo, colors, typography, and all the packaging of the business. For me, branding, as I mentioned, is a long-term practice. It's not an event. It's a journey. So when people say I developed the branding of my company, I don't understand it in my mind, because for me, branding is something that you do forever. It's not something that you have, And I think probably another mistake would be copying other companies, which is something that I see very often. Because a new company or a small company, they look up at the leaders in the category, or big companies, successful companies in whatever technology is. They copy those, assuming that if they do or adopt the moves that these successful companies do, they copy the colors, they copy the typography, they follow the steps, they live in the shadows of those companies, they will be successful and it's going to work for them. And it's the opposite, because what they are doing is actually reinforcing the position of the leader, and position their companies as followers. So it's losing 100%. So those are four that top of mind. I think it's something that I see very often. There are plenty of more.
That last one's pretty interesting in, today, when you have these AI tools and other things coming out that people are leveraging. And in many ways, what they're doing is they're duplicating what has worked out there before. And I know there's some different philosophies on this, because there are some out there who say, you know what, initially, if you know somebody else is doing it right, capture what they're doing. But I think the idea is there's this subtle difference, I think, in that brand part that you're mentioning, because if they don't understand their own positioning and what makes them stand out, then failing might be the wrong word to put it, but they don't stand out. And I think it's kind of like personal brand, when people look at that. And then now, again, there's all these tools, be it LinkedIn or others, where it's like, hey, just take this post from somebody else and, leverage it on your own, because it was successful over there for them. But then you get to this point where nobody is really showing a unique identity that makes somebody say why they should listen to them. So I liked how you had put that. It is something we're seeing a lot of people, I think, attempt now. And then volume becomes their game, create as much as they can at scale, instead of, again, create a unique voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry.
I have a question for you, Easy. So I've, here and there, not in a formal way like you do, but, helping or working with kind of early stage founders and, speaking to them. And I see something regularly where especially pre-revenue, where there might be a demo, there might be a product, but not really out in the marketplace yet, where the founders or founder, their kind of personality becomes the culture of that early stage startup, whether it's a team of 2, 5, 6, and then that culture becomes their brand, because that's the only thing that's public facing so far. There isn't a product yet. And then they'll go into pitch meetings, and that's what they show as the brand of the company. Do you think that is a mistake, and the branding of the product should be even thought about when you're in that very, very early stage, and culture should be kind of separate, branding separate?
So I think a loaded question, because too many things in the pocket. But so definitely, when an entrepreneur or a founding team creates the company and they start building it, they have to lead with their own personal brands, right? There are people that are against talking about personal brands, just reputation or whatever it is. I like the term, and I believe that for years, what they do as leaders, as real people, is going to add value to the company, and not necessarily vice versa. So if you look at the followers of Tim Cook, the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world, or these followers, or Elon Musk, or I don't know, Richard Branson, these guys have more followers than the actual companies, sometimes 2, 3 times. Well, Elon is probably 15 times, I don't know, but this, because we like to engage and follow people and real companies. So I always push for for entrepreneurs to be out there, not just pitching investors or talking to customers, but actually creating content and being out there, because they are part of the brand. They are an asset for the company. They are ambassadors. Everyone in the team, whatever they do. So I don't know if that goes in the direction that you wanted, but I believe that formalizing, accepting, embracing the fact that you are a company asset, that you're a brand asset for the company, and the sooner you understand that you are an engagement content for the company brand, the better it's going to be for both of you entrepreneur and the company. Now, eventually, the company is going to grow, be successful. It's going to have a big team, and probably the company is going to have more. It's going to get more attention in terms of brand content than you, and you probably need to continue being authentic and being out there. But yeah, I assume that smart founders understand this, that investors don't invest in a branding deck. They invest in people. They don't invest even in the idea. They believe they invest in people that can actually make that idea bigger, right? So building your presence, your halo effect over the company is super important.
So next question I have for you is I know I've struggled for this because one of the things that I'm not sure if I told you, but while I was at Disney, and Michael too, for part of that, we had a startup on the side, and it was a tech startup. Sometimes it was hard to gain clarity on what is my strategy and what is my brand strategy. And, one day it felt like, oh my God, I got it. One day it felt like, oh my God, we're so wrong. And it was this roller coaster ride. And it kept evolving. And I feel like every 6 months we would update the brand strategy until we got to MVP and we had a product in the market. And the product, our kind of elevator pitch was open table for nightlife. And it was kind of a platform that allowed consumers to kind of engage with guest list and bottle service, and then on the back end, just like open table, it was a whole venue management system with data capturing and marketing. And I had a second life for 5 years. I was a CEO of that while an executive at Disney, but clarity of brand strategy was very difficult. So I'm curious, how does an early stage founder know when they have clarity in their brand strategy?
Give me 3 seconds to buffer the answer, because it's going to be a very long answer. So the work I try to do with early stage founders is to flip a 180 degrees flip, which is coming from a product centric mindset to a customer centric mindset, right? When I meet with technology entrepreneurs that are starting the business the first couple of years, they only talk about, generally they talk about their product, the features, all the functional part of the business, and they sometimes don't know enough about their customers, the motivations, what they are expecting, how the people feel. They don't run surveys, they don't do research, they don't have resources to engage with dozens of them every week. So that's the first thing that I realize when I start working with them, and I know I have a job in front of me. But so I developed this methodology that you mentioned, Epicenter, because the idea is that you put customers at the heart of your brand and the brand at the heart of your business. That's why it's Epicenter. And the way I work that idea towards the famous clarity and expected is that you need to shift your mindset, right? So let's talk about mindset. So strategy and mindset is something that goes together. I always explain this as hardware and software, right? So you buy a computer and you change it probably every 3-5 years, maybe. right? Because it lasts. But what you do with your computer in order to last and improve is to update the software, right? So it performs better. So for me, the strategy is the hardware part of your business. It has the things, the tangible things that you're going to do to move from A to B. But then you need to update your software, your mindset, to actually make the right decisions towards the objectives and moving the company forward, right? So it's so I always say that I try to help founders to get the best version of their business with the strategy, and the best version of the team with the mindset, right? Both together is going to give them the tangible and the intangible part of going towards clarity. Now, how do you know that you have clear ideas of what the brand is and what's your purpose in this world? So I picked 5 questions of brand strategy that I always apply. My methodology is part of going through this in a process. It's very integrated to the work they do. But the 5 questions is, why are you here? Why you created the company? And we work with the brand direction. So it's where the purpose, the vision, the mission. Most entrepreneurs in this world articulate this the wrong way. They misunderstand what a vision is or a mission. So you hear the vision and it sounds like a purpose because it's not tangible. So I developed a way, I call it the bounce effect, to articulate and manifest these 3 things in a way that is integrated and makes sense and is clear. The second question is, who do you serve? It's actually understanding more of your customer. It's not just small companies or corporate, whatever. It's actually going a little bit deeper into understand the motivations, the needs, the desires. How can you help them achieve what they want with your solution? What that will represent? How do they feel? And on and on. The third question is, where do you play? What's the category? What alternatives are your customers considering when they see you or solving those problems that they have? Who's serving these customers in the area that you act? The fourth question is, what makes you win? So if category is where you play, what is the difference? Why they are going to choose you instead of the others? So you need to define kind of a white space or point of difference, the differentiated value that you provide to your customers that is going to make them pick you instead of the other alternatives. Sometimes these are not companies. And the fifth one is, how are you going to grow? How are you going to tell this story? How are you going to show up? And that's where we work on the brand expression, the storytelling, the brand narrative, the key messaging, whatever the visual frameworks, the verbal frameworks, and all of these that gives direction, creative direction to the executions, design, and all of that. So those are the 5 questions that I always recommend answering. So if you can answer these 5 questions confidently and clearly, you actually are in the right place. Now, here's the caveat. So what I found over the years is that the creative industry, call it design agencies, freelancers, marketing agencies, social. I don't want to beat anyone in or blame anything, but we educated people that strategy is that 2 hours session before designing logos, or that questionnaire that I send you in between meetings, so I can justify my creative decisions as a provider, right? So we leapfrogged through strategy towards the production, the thing, right? So the whole creative industry is about tactics, it's about executing, it's about producing. So I decided a process that is 4 months to only talk about strategy. It takes 4 months to develop the brand strategy with me, because I created a process that is a weekly session of 2 hours and forcing a pause in between sessions so people can digest is the only way to shift mindsets, that people think about these in between sessions, and it's not just a Tony Robbins woohoo thing from Monday to Friday, because it happened to me. I tried to do it in a week, and then the following week people called me and say, why did we mean by this or that, and they forget. They don't actually embrace everything and embed the concepts. So I developed this process, which is it's like an airplane loading fuel in the air, that they don't stop what they do. They just I join them at the pace of the company once a week. They turn the computer, no homework, and I do the heavy lifting of facilitating those towards that process. I believe that over those 4 months, they can start building this idea of a brand mindset towards the long-term application.
I think that's huge. It sounds so brilliant, even though I can expect that people at first would be like, 4 months, wait, I just came to you to get a quick output. Where are my logos? Where are my, whatever it is they want to say. But
For how much?
yeah, exactly. But I think so few companies really get and understand branding. And again, referencing back to Disney, I think Disney really did understand it. And I think there are some other companies that really get it out there, like Apple, and you can name others that do. But I think that is helping to change the mindset. It's kind of like, in some ways, culture. A lot of companies, and we've experienced this, where they'll go and they'll be like, yeah, we want to look at our culture, we want to do this, but they have like an offsite around culture, and then they come back and they expect everything they did to somehow transition to actually effectiveness, but it doesn't, because they haven't actually continued to make that part of the regular practice, and it goes away. So what you're saying in that approach makes so much sense, and I could see what a huge advantage it would give to early founders, especially, or just any point actually in a company. It would have a huge benefit to really make that part of their everyday way of approaching things. So
because
brilliant.
brand is for life. You want to build a unicorn, you want to build a company that is going to last 20, 30 years. Investing 4 months thinking about that future doesn't feel that of an investment, right? But if you have a short-term mindset, like a scarcity mindset, that everything needs to happen right now, the traction, the promise. Of course, there's a runway, and people sometimes, I find entrepreneurs that can't think long term, because the company is not going to exist if they don't make money fast. So those are not people that
and they have fires they're putting out instead of thinking long term.
So one client of mine told me that the sessions that we have, it was kind of a sanctuary, because it was a 2-hour protected strategic thinking for 2 hours. Because one of the things that I do, and I don't know if I mentioned this, I don't work just with the founders of the CEO of the company or CTO. We actually build a team of 5-10 people, depending on the company, of the key individuals in the organization that are going to execute the strategy. So those 2 hour sessions a week, I have a team sitting there, like the head of product, the head of finance, customer success. Sometimes is the human resources person. I have lawyers. So it's a multidisciplinary team, because I would say making them part of the formulation of the strategy of the company is going to make them owners of it. And ensures that they are going to want to work to make it work, right?
When you say it, I can't help but think about it this way. And you tell me if this is wrong, but it feels like you come in as almost this, I don't know if you call it a fractional brand officer, but until you basically train the team who can take over that role, and then you step out, and then, I mean, not to say they wouldn't call you back in for refreshers and stuff like that. I could see some benefits, but does that sound like a decent way to look at it?
Maybe. I don't know. I always say that the CEOs are the chief brand officers until they can hire one. But sometimes they don't have the capacity or the ability, so they need to hire one. I don't like the idea of the fractional role, but for 4 months or 8 months, depending on the time frame that you work with me, I am the head. I'm the guy that talks about brand and makes everyone collaborate towards building it or crafting it or evolving it, right?
The guiding coach,
I think so, yes.
If a founder, an entrepreneur, doesn't have the resources, especially financial resources, to bring in someone like you, what advice would you have for someone like that that's strapped for resources? What should they be thinking about?
So for time, invest time. It's definitely something that they have, something that they feel they don't have, but they actually have. If I always ask people, how many hours uh, are you on social media every day, right? And what social media do you actually use? It's not just LinkedIn. So it's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's sometimes gaming. So those are hours that they can actually use to invest in reading books, making some courses, talking to people, uh, listening to podcasts and reading interviews, articles. There's so much material and content to be good at this just by studying and learning. That would be the starting point. I would say so. Ask questions. One thing that I learned is that second time founders get this because they failed in the first one and they know that they didn't devote enough time to the brand. So the second time founders, it's in the master plan. It's priority one. So they know, customer centric. They know they need they look the part as a company. They need to figure out a narrative, and they look for people like us to solve this problem from the beginning.
Very interesting. I see parallels in that, and I help people in the vacation rental space. And whenever they first start a vacation rental, it's like, that first one, they built it for them. But then after that, or as they look at expanding, then they're thinking a little bit more about like the brand and what it means and actually the customers they want to attract. And there's this whole different way because now it becomes a little bit more of a serious business for them. And I do have to say too, the other thing I think is those 5 questions you gave, those are so powerful for people to go through that I just think most people don't ever think about. And I think if for those who can't, aren't jumping into it yet or aren't at the size where they can afford it, just, I think asking themselves those, I loved hearing them from you. And I'm like, man, I got to think about those a little bit more as well. So
Sticking to the theme of advice, if you went back to your younger self, your early 20s, what advice would you give that person?
Buy Apple stock.
Great advice.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a person that reflects on the failures in a way that I would love to go back and correct them, right?
Yeah.
So, but maybe reading more.
Mhm.
I enjoy so much reading and learning, and I spend hours a day learning new things every
It's
single
awesome.
day of my life, whether if
Yeah.
it's reading or listening or doing something, practicing. So I would probably say, don't forget what are you learning today.
I have to ask on that. Is there a couple of standout books that you think
Oh,
people must read?
uh,
I know it's a,
I'm
it's a,
looking
it's
at
a
the
loaded one.
the
So
pile.
just keep,
I don't
yeah.
know if you ask me. Well, every book from Martin Neumeyer, I think on brand. I think those are kind of mini Bibles.
Okay.
I certified with Marty and Level C over the years. I did 3
Yeah.
times. So I got to work with them. I think his books, I read them years ago and reread them. All of the books from um, Daniel Priestley, another
Yep.
entrepreneur, he's amazing, and he has so many tools in his books. April Damford, she's amazing in the positioning side. She has an amazing book. There's so many. But if someone is
Yeah.
listening and wants a list of 200 books that I'm looking at, just reach out to me, and I will take you
Yeah.
picture of all my books, and
Amazing.
you can pick up.
Yeah.
That's great. And kind of speaking of reach out, how can people find you if they want to ask you more questions or ask you for your list of books?
Cool. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can search for my name. I post almost every day of the year. My website is hellolalo.com. It's easy. But you can reach out on social media. I'm on Instagram as well. I mean, I'm pretty much everywhere, but I mostly pay attention to LinkedIn these days.
And I do have to say this. I did notice on Instagram, I don't know whether or not it's one or two, but I came across some of your artwork or illustration, however you call it. It's amazing. I love that style. I don't even know. Is there a name for that style you use with all the line, whatever you...
No, I don't know. It's probably, it's my craziness.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And now it's like, it just feels, again, uniquely you. And when I looked at that, I'm just like, my goodness. Like, and then I've gone through and looked at more and more of it because it's so cool. And the mind is just so easy to get lost in. So anyway, we'll link to that too, so people could see it. Cause it's just, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Actually, I am an artist. That's my nature. That's what the first things that I did in my life was drawing, and visual arts. It was always my thing. And I became an executive, a corporate strategy by a business guy. All of that was an addition to what I do. But I also draw every single day. Now I do it on digital, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
We'll see.
Uh,
I love it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for spending your time with us. If you guys like this content, please check out the other episodes. If you have any questions for us, for Easy, drop them in the comments or contact Easy directly. And then we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Easy.
Thanks.